She ran from the altar with her heart in flames, thinking everything was lost. But that same woman, the one who shouldn't have been there, was the one who found her outside. And in the silence between them, the truth neither had the courage to admit for years was finally born. What happened next, no one was prepared to see. If you're listening to this story on Soul Stirring Stories, stay with us until the end, because some truths are worth running toward, not away from. The late afternoon sun filtered through the stained glass windows of St. Catherine's Chapel in Charleston, South Carolina, painting rainbow patterns across the white marble floor. The pews were filled with 200 guests, a sea of pastel dresses and pressed suits, all waiting for the ceremony that would unite two of Charleston's most prominent families. Madison Claire Hartwell stood in the bride's preparation room, staring at her reflection in the full-length mirror. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace, custom designed by a boutique in Savannah. Her dark auburn hair was styled in an elegant updo, adorned with tiny pearls that caught the light. She looked every inch the perfect Charleston bride. She felt like she was suffocating. "You look absolutely radiant, darling." Her mother, Catherine Hartwell, adjusted an invisible imperfection in Madison's veil, her movements precise and controlled. Everything about Catherine was precise and controlled, her blonde bob never out of place, her Chanel suit immaculate, her expectations absolute. "Thanks, Mom." Madison's voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "David is a wonderful match, Madison. The Cunninghams are old Charleston money, excellent reputation. You're making a very smart decision." Catherine's smile was approving, the kind of smile Madison had spent 28 years trying to earn. A smart decision. That's what this was. Not a passionate choice, not a love story for the ages, but a smart decision. David Cunningham was handsome, successful, and appropriate. He checked every box on the list Madison had been taught to value since childhood. He was safe, predictable, expected. He just didn't make her heart race. 5 minutes, Miss Hartwell," came a soft knock at the door. Madison's hands trembled as she picked up her bouquet of white roses and pale pink peonies. Through the door, she could hear the string quartet beginning the processional music. This was it. In 5 minutes, she would walk down that aisle, say, "I do," and become Mrs. David Cunningham. She would become who she was supposed to be. The doors opened, and Madison took her father's arm. Richard Hartwell, distinguished in his tuxedo, squeezed her hand. "Proud of you, Maddie girl," he whispered, using the childhood nickname that suddenly made her want to cry. The processional began. Step by step, Madison moved forward, her smile fixed in place, her eyes focused on David waiting at the altar. He looked nervous but happy, his blonde hair perfectly combed, his smile genuine. He was a good man. He deserved someone who could love him completely. She wished desperately that she could be that person. As they reached the halfway point down the aisle, Madison's eyes swept over the guests almost unconsciously. Aunts, uncles, family friends, David's fraternity brothers, her sorority sisters from College of Charleston. Face after familiar face, everyone beaming, everyone approving. And then, in the very last row, partially hidden by a column, she saw her, Olivia. The world tilted. Madison's step faltered so noticeably that her father looked at her with concern. Madison. But she couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the woman who couldn't be there. Olivia Reed sat in the shadows of the last pew, her dark hair longer than Madison remembered, falling in waves past her shoulders. She wore a simple navy dress that made her gray eyes stand out even from a distance. Those eyes, Madison would have known them anywhere, in any crowd, after any amount of time. They had haunted her dreams for 7 years. Olivia's expression was unreadable, but the pain in her eyes was unmistakable. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't crying. She was just there, present in a moment she had no business being part of, like a ghost from a past Madison had tried desperately to bury. The music swelled. David waited at the altar, his hand extended, ready to receive his bride. The minister smiled benevolently. 200 guests held their collective breath, and Madison Clark Hartwell did the most impulsive thing she had ever done in her carefully controlled life. She ran. The bouquet fell from her hands, white roses scattering across the marble floor as she gathered her dress and bolted back down the aisle. Gasps erupted from the guests. Someone, maybe David, maybe her mother, called her name. But Madison didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Her heels clicked frantically against the stone floor as she burst through the chapel doors into the late afternoon sunlight. The humidity of Charleston summer hit her like a wall, but she kept running, her veil flying behind her, her carefully pinned hair beginning to come loose. She ran down the chapel steps, through the manicured gardens, past the shocked wedding coordinator, past the photographer who stood frozen with his camera, past everything and everyone until she reached the old garden wall at the edge of the property. There, finally, she stopped. Her chest heaving, her dress dirty at the hem, her perfect wedding makeup smeared with tears she hadn't realized she was crying. She pressed her back against the ancient brick wall and slid down to sit on the ground, not caring about the silk dress that cost more than some people's cars. She had just run from her own wedding. She had just humiliated David, scandalized both families, and destroyed years of careful planning in less than 30 seconds. And all she could think about was Olivia's face in that last pew. Madison. The voice was soft, achingly familiar, and exactly the one she had been both dreading and hoping to hear. Madison looked up through her tears to see Olivia standing a few feet away, silhouetted against the golden afternoon light. Up close, Madison could see the changes 7 years had brought. Fine lines at the corners of Olivia's eyes that came from smiling. A small scar above her left eyebrow that hadn't been there before. A quiet strength in her posture that spoke of battles fought and survived. But her eyes, those gray eyes that shifted between storm and silver depending on her mood, those were exactly the same. "Why are you here?" Madison's voice cracked. "You shouldn't be here." Olivia moved closer slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. She sat down on the ground beside Madison, not touching, leaving a careful space between them. Her navy dress pooled around her legs, a stark contrast to Madison's elaborate wedding gown. "I know," Olivia said simply. "I know I shouldn't be." "Then why?" The question came out as almost a sob. "Why come? Why now? Why today?" Olivia was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I couldn't let you marry him without knowing." "Knowing what?" "That I never stopped." Olivia turned to look at Madison directly, and the raw emotion in her eyes made Madison's breath catch. 7 years, Madison. 7 years of trying to move on, trying to forget, trying to convince myself that what we had wasn't real or wasn't worth the cost. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't let you walk down that aisle and promise yourself to someone else without you knowing that I never stopped loving you. The words hung in the humid air between them, heavy with years of silence and separation. Madison felt something crack open inside her chest, something she had locked away so carefully, so completely, that she had almost convinced herself it had never existed at all. "You don't get to do this," Madison said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You don't get to show up after 7 years and say these things. Not now. Not today." "I know." Olivia's voice broke. "I know it's selfish. I know it's unfair. But Madison, I sat in that pew and watched you walking toward him, and I realized that staying silent would be even more unfair. To you, to him, to both of us. You left." The accusation came out sharp, years of buried hurt suddenly surfacing. "You left me, Olivia. You were the one who walked away." "I know." Tears were streaming down Olivia's face now. And it was the biggest mistake of my life. They sat in silence, two women in a garden at a wedding that hadn't happened, surrounded by flowers and the distant sound of confused voices from the chapel. The sun was beginning its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. "Tell me," Madison said finally, her voice steadier now. "Tell me everything. Why you left, where you've been, why you came back. I need to understand." Olivia nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." And as the afternoon light faded into evening, Olivia began to speak, unraveling the story of 7 years of silence, 7 years of running, 7 years of trying to escape a love that refused to die. "I was 23 when I met you," Olivia began, her voice taking on the quality of someone recounting a dream. "Fresh out of graduate school, terrified and excited about my first real job at the Charleston Museum. You were interning there for the summer before your senior year at College of Charleston." Madison remembered. God, how she remembered. "The Civil War exhibit," she said softly. "I was cataloging letters from soldiers. You were working on the accompanying art installation. You wore this yellow sundress that first day." Olivia smiled slightly at the memory. "You looked like sunshine in that basement archive room. I thought you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I thought you were intimidating." Madison found herself smiling too, despite everything. "You were so confident, so sure of yourself. I was still figuring out who I was." "I wasn't confident," Olivia shook her head. "I was terrified. I had just come out to my family 6 months before. My father, a Baptist minister in rural Georgia, had basically disowned me. I was living in a new city, starting a new job, trying to figure out how to be myself in a world that didn't always want me to be. You never told me that, about your father. I didn't want you to see me as broken." Olivia's voice was raw. "And then, you, this beautiful, smart, kind woman who made the archive room feel less lonely, you smiled at me one day when I brought you coffee. And I thought, maybe broken isn't all I have to be." Madison felt her throat tighten. "When did you know that you felt something?" "The 3rd week." Olivia's answer came without hesitation. "You were having trouble with a particularly difficult translation of a soldier's letter. The handwriting was nearly illegible, and you were getting frustrated. I came over to help, and our hands touched when you handed me the letter." She paused. "It was like electricity. I knew in that moment that whatever I was feeling was bigger than friendship." "I knew that day too," Madison admitted, the confession feeling both terrifying and freeing. "I went home that night and cried because I was so confused. I had dated boys all through high school and college. I was supposed to graduate, find a nice man, get married, have the life my parents planned for me. And then you looked at me with those gray eyes, and suddenly nothing made sense anymore. We fought it for so long." Olivia's voice held a note of sadness. "Remember, 4 months of working side by side, pretending we didn't feel what we felt. Until the gala." Madison's heart clenched at the memory. "The museum's annual fundraiser, you wore that black dress. And you wore emerald green," Olivia continued. "We ended up on the terrace, away from the crowd. The music was playing inside. You said something funny. I don't even remember what. And we both started laughing. And then we weren't laughing anymore. You kissed me." Madison could still feel it, even after 7 years. "Under the Carolina stars, with jazz music drifting through the windows. You kissed me, and it felt like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been missing." "You kissed me back," Olivia said softly. "And for 8 months after that, we had something I've spent 7 years trying and failing to find again." Madison closed her eyes, letting the memories wash over her. Secret meetings in Olivia's apartment. Stolen kisses in the archive room when everyone else had gone home. Whispered conversations about dreams and fears and futures. The way Olivia made her laugh. The way she made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. "We were happy," Madison whispered. "We were." Olivia's voice broke. "Until your mother found out." The memory was like ice water. Madison remembered that day with crystalline clarity. Coming home to her parents' house in the historic district to find her mother waiting in the sitting room, her face a mask of controlled fury. "She had hired someone," Madison said flatly. "A private investigator. She had photographs of us together, leaving your apartment, holding hands in the park, kissing. She gave you an ultimatum." Olivia's voice was hollow. "Me or your family." Madison's hands clenched into fists in the silk of her wedding dress. "She said if I continued seeing you, I would be cut off completely. Financially, socially, familially. She said I would lose everything. My inheritance, my place in society, my family name. She said I would disgrace 3 generations of Hartwells. And she said I would ruin your life." Olivia's voice was barely audible. "She came to see me, did you know that? Your mother. She came to my apartment the next day." Madison's head snapped around. "What? You never told me that. She offered me money." Olivia's laugh was bitter. $50,000 to leave Charleston and never contact you again. When I refused, she threatened to have me fired from the museum, to ruin my career, to make sure I could never work in my field again. She said if I really loved you, I would let you have the life you were meant to have. Oh my God. Madison felt sick. "Olivia, I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know she did that." "I know. But Madison, here's the thing I've never told you." Olivia turned to face her fully now, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't leave because of your mother's threats. I didn't leave because of the money or the career or any of that." "Then why?" Madison's voice cracked. "Why did you disappear? I came to your apartment, and you were gone. No note, no goodbye, just gone. Why? Because I loved you too much to let you choose me." The words hung in the air like a revelation. Madison stared at Olivia, trying to process what she was hearing. "I saw what it was doing to you," Olivia continued, her voice thick with emotion. "The guilt, the fear, the constant anxiety about being discovered. You stopped sleeping. You lost weight. You were pulling away from your family, from your friends, from everything you'd ever known. And I realized that loving me was destroying you." "That wasn't your decision to make," Madison said, anger flaring suddenly. "You didn't get to decide what was best for me." "I know." Olivia's voice was broken. "I know that now. But I was 24 years old, scared out of my mind, and convinced that the best way to love you was to let you go. So, I took a job in Boston. I packed up and left without saying goodbye because I knew if I saw you, I wouldn't be able to leave. I spent months looking for you." Madison's voice was raw. "I called, emailed, showed up at the museum. No one would tell me where you'd gone. Eventually I gave up. I convinced myself that you'd never really loved me, that it had all been some kind of summer fling for you. Never." Olivia reached out, then stopped herself. "Madison, there hasn't been a single day in 7 years that I haven't thought about you. I've started 100 letters I never sent. I've picked up the phone 1,000 times and hung up before calling. I followed your life online. Your job at your father's law firm, your volunteer work, your engagement to David. Why didn't you reach out?" Madison's voice was a whisper. "If you felt all of this, why didn't you ever reach out?" "Because I thought I'd made my choice, and I had to live with it." Olivia wiped her face. But then I saw your wedding announcement in the Charleston Post and Courier. I saw your photo, and you looked beautiful, but empty. And I couldn't stop thinking about what your mother said to me 7 years ago. What did she say? She said, "My daughter will have a proper life, with a proper husband and proper children. What you're offering her is nothing but shame and struggle. Is that really what you want for someone you claim to love?" Olivia's voice shook. And I believed her, Madison. For 7 years, I believed that loving you meant letting you have that proper life. But watching you walk down that aisle today, I realized something. What? That I had confused loving you with making you invisible. That I had let your mother's prejudice convince me that our love was something to be ashamed of instead of something to be celebrated. That I had given up the best thing that ever happened to me because I was afraid. Madison felt tears streaming down her face, ruining what was left of her makeup. I'm engaged to a man I don't love. I was about to marry someone just to make my family happy, just to fit into the life I'm supposed to want. I convinced myself that what we had wasn't real, that it was just a phase, that I could be happy with proper and appropriate and expected. And now? Olivia asked softly. Now I don't know anything. Madison's voice broke completely. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I don't know how to fix the mess I just made. I just ran from my own wedding, Olivia. I humiliated David, disappointed my parents, scandalized everyone. And the worst part is, she sobbed, the worst part is the only thing I feel about it is relief. Olivia moved closer, closing the space between them. Madison, look at me. Madison raised her tear-stained face. You don't have to have all the answers right now, Olivia said gently. You don't have to know exactly who you are or what you want or how to fix everything. All you have to do right now is tell the truth. Can you do that? What truth? The truth about what you're feeling. Right now. In this moment. Olivia's gray eyes held Madison's with an intensity that made her heart race. Not what you're supposed to feel. Not what your mother wants you to feel. Not what would be easier or more convenient. What do you actually feel? Madison took a shaking breath, and then, for the first time in 7 years, she told the complete truth. I feel like I've been holding my breath for 7 years, and seeing you was the first real breath I've taken. The words tumbled out, raw and honest. I feel terrified and relieved and angry and grateful all at once. I feel like I just woke up from a long sleep. I feel like I've been living someone else's life, and I don't know how to start living my own. And I feel... Her voice broke. I feel like I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Not for a single moment. And that scares me more than anything. Olivia's face crumpled. Madison. I don't know what to do with that, Madison continued, the words flowing like a dam had broken. I don't know how to be the person who loves you and the person my family expects me to be. I don't know how to choose between the life I've always known and the life I actually want. I don't know how to be brave enough to be myself. You don't have to have it all figured out tonight. Olivia reached out slowly, giving Madison time to pull away, and took her hand. But Madison, you just ran from your wedding. That took courage. Maybe not the kind your family will understand, but courage nonetheless. Madison looked down at their intertwined fingers, Olivia's tan skin against her own paler complexion, and felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like rightness. What do I do now? She whispered. Well, Olivia said, a hint of her old humor creeping in. I'd suggest maybe talking to David. The poor guy is probably still standing at that altar wondering what happened. Madison groaned, dropping her forehead to Olivia's shoulder. Oh, God, I'm a terrible person. You're not. Olivia's free hand came up to gently stroke Madison's hair, several pins falling loose. You're someone who made a mistake and realized it before it became irreversible. That doesn't make you terrible. It makes you human. They sat like that for several minutes, Madison's head on Olivia's shoulder, their hands clasped as the evening deepened around them. From the chapel, they could hear raised voices, Madison's mother's sharp tone cutting through, her father's lower rumble, David's confused protests. "I've ruined everything," Madison said softly. "Maybe." Olivia's voice was gentle. "Or maybe you've just started over. Sometimes they look the same at first." Madison lifted her head, looking into Olivia's face, the face she had dreamed about for 7 years, the face she had tried to forget and failed spectacularly. "I'm not ready," she said honestly. "I'm not ready to come out to my family. I'm not ready to deal with the fallout. I'm not ready for any of this." "Okay," Olivia said simply. "Okay? Madison, I'm not here to pressure you or push you or demand anything from you." Olivia squeezed her hand. "I came today because I needed you to know the truth. What you do with that truth is entirely up to you. If you need time, take time. If you need space, take space. I've waited 7 years. I can wait longer. What if I can never be brave enough?" Madison's voice was small, vulnerable. "What if I can never be the person who can openly be with you?" Olivia was quiet for a moment, considering. "Then I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But Madison, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. The woman I fell in love with 7 years ago was brave in ways she didn't even realize. And the woman who just ran from her own wedding? She's brave too, even if she doesn't feel like it yet." Madison Clark Hartwell, where are you?" Catherine's voice cut through the garden, sharp and commanding. Madison tensed instinctively. "I have to go," she said, but she didn't move. "I know." Olivia didn't let go of her hand. "Will you—" Madison hesitated. "Will you be here, in Charleston?" "I took a week off work," Olivia said. "I'm staying at the Harbor View Inn downtown, room 304. She squeezed Madison's hand once more, then released it. "If you want to talk, I'm here. If you don't, I'll understand." Madison stood slowly, her wedding dress dirty and wrinkled, her veil long gone, her hair falling down around her shoulders. She looked nothing like the perfect bride who had started down that aisle an hour ago. She looked real. "Olivia," she said, as she turned to leave. "Thank you for coming, for telling me, for everything." "Always," Olivia said softly. Madison walked back toward the chaos, toward her angry mother and confused father and humiliated fiancé. She walked toward the mess she had made, the life she had disrupted, the expectations she had shattered. But for the first time in 7 years, she walked toward it as herself. The next 3 days were brutal. David, to his credit, had been kinder than she deserved. He had listened as she tried to explain, his face moving from confusion to hurt, to a resigned understanding that perhaps surprised them both. "I think I knew," he had said quietly, sitting in his parents' parlor. Not about her specifically, but that there was something, someone, some part of you I could never reach. He had looked at her sadly. "I hoped that would change after we were married." "I'm so sorry," Madison had said, and meant it. "You deserve someone who loves you completely." "So do you," he had replied, and that small kindness had made her cry harder than anything else. Her mother was another story. Catherine Hartwell had moved from shock to fury, to an icy disappointment that somehow felt worse than anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she had hissed. "The humiliation, the gossip. The Cunninghams will never forgive this. We'll be the laughingstock of Charleston." "I'm sorry," Madison had said, over and over. But she wasn't sorry for running. She was only sorry for the hurt she had caused. Her father had been quiet, surprisingly so. He had sat in his study that night, pouring 2 glasses of bourbon, and handed one to Madison. "Your mother is upset," he had said finally, "and she has a right to be. You handled this badly, Maddie. Real badly." "I know. But..." He had taken a sip. "I'd rather have a daughter who runs from the wrong choice than one who goes through with it out of obligation." Madison had looked up, surprised. Her father, traditional and proper as they came, was the last person she expected understanding from. "I'm not saying I understand everything going on with you," he had continued. "And your mother. Well, she's going to need time. But you're my daughter. That doesn't change." It was more than she had hoped for, less than she needed. But it was something. Now, on the 4th day after the wedding that wasn't, Madison sat in her apartment. She had moved out of her parents' house 2 years ago. Thank God, staring at a piece of paper with a phone number written on it. Room 304, Harbor View Inn. She had thought about nothing else for 3 days. About Olivia's face in the garden. About the feeling of their hands intertwined. About 7 years of trying to be someone she wasn't. About what it might mean to finally stop trying. Her phone rang. Rachel, her best friend from law school, calling for the 3rd time that day. "Okay, I'm coming over," Rachel announced when Madison answered. "You can't hide in your apartment forever." "I'm not hiding. I'm processing. You're spiraling." Rachel's voice was firm but kind. "And before you spiral any further, I think you need to actually talk to the woman who caused all of this." "She didn't cause it. I did. By being a coward for 7 years." "Then stop being a coward now." Rachel's voice softened. "Maddie, I love you, and I have watched you be miserable for as long as I've known you. You were never happy with David. You were never happy with any of the men you dated. You were just going through the motions." "I know. So stop going through the motions. Go talk to her. Figure out what you actually want, not what your mother wants or what Charleston society wants, what Madison wants." After she hung up, Madison sat for another hour, turning the paper over and over in her hands. And then, before she could talk herself out of it, she grabbed her keys and drove to the Harbor View Inn. The hotel was beautiful, a restored historic building overlooking Charleston Harbor. Madison's hands shook as she climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. She stood outside room 304 for a full minute before finally knocking. Olivia opened the door in jeans and a simple gray t-shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked casual, comfortable, and somehow more beautiful than Madison remembered. "Hi," Madison said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hi." Olivia stepped back. "Come in." The room was cozy, with windows overlooking the water. Olivia had clearly been working. Her laptop was open on the desk, papers spread out around it. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Madison started. "You're not interrupting." Olivia closed the laptop. "I was hoping you'd come." They stood awkwardly for a moment, and then Madison said, "I talked to David." "How did it go?" "Better than I deserved. He was kind. Understanding even." Madison moved to the window, looking out at the harbor. "My mother is furious. My father is disappointed but trying. My social life in Charleston is essentially over." "I'm sorry. Don't be." Madison turned to face her. "It needed to happen. All of it. I needed to see you, to make sure the other night was real." "It was real." Madison took a breath. "Tell me about your life, the last 7 years, what you've been doing in Boston, everything." So Olivia did. She talked about her job as a curator at the Museum of Fine Arts, about the apartment she rented in the South End, about her cat, Marble, who was probably destroying her apartment as they spoke, about the friends she had made, the life she had built. "Have you dated anyone?" Madison asked, not sure she wanted to know the answer. "I've tried," Olivia admitted. "A few relationships, Nothing that lasted more than a few months. I kept comparing everyone to you, which wasn't fair to them or to me. I did the same thing, Madison confessed. Every man I dated, I kept thinking about how they weren't you. How they didn't make me laugh the way you did. How they didn't understand me the way you did. How being with them felt like work instead of coming home. They talked for hours, catching up on 7 years of separation, filling in the gaps. And slowly, the awkwardness faded, replaced by the easy connection they had always shared. As the sun began to set, painting the harbor in shades of gold and pink, Olivia said quietly, "Madison, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Okay, what do you want? Not tomorrow or next month or next year. Right now, in this moment. What do you want?" Madison looked at Olivia, really looked at her, at the way the sunset light caught in her hair, at the vulnerability in her gray eyes, at the woman she had never stopped loving. "I want to try," Madison said simply. "I want to try being brave. I want to try being myself. I want to try being with you, openly and honestly, whatever that means and whatever it costs." "It might cost everything," Olivia warned. "Your mother might never accept it. Charleston society might never forgive you. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." Madison moved closer. "But I'm tired, Olivia. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of living a half-life. I'm tired of being afraid. And I'm tired of being without you." "Are you sure?" Olivia's voice shook. "Because if we really do this, I need to know you're sure. I can't go through losing you again." "I'm terrified," Madison admitted. "But I'm sure. For the first time in 7 years, I'm completely sure about something." Olivia closed the distance between them, her hands coming up to frame Madison's face. "Then let's be terrified together." When they kissed, it was like 7 years hadn't passed at all, and yet everything was different. They weren't hiding now. They weren't afraid. They were just two women who had loved each other, lost each other, and somehow found their way back. When they finally broke apart, both of them crying and laughing at the same time, Madison said, "So what now?" "Now?" Olivia smiled, that beautiful smile Madison had missed so much. "Now we figure it out. One day at a time. One choice at a time. Together. Together," Madison repeated, and the word felt like a promise. "I like the sound of that." 3 months later, Madison stood in front of her parents' house in the historic district, taking a deep breath. Olivia stood beside her, their hands clasped tightly. "You don't have to do this," Olivia said quietly. "Not if you're not ready." "I'm ready." And surprisingly, Madison meant it. The last 3 months had been the most honest, most challenging, and most joyful of her life. She had started therapy to work through years of hiding. She had begun to build a life that was actually hers, and she had fallen in love with Olivia all over again. Or maybe she had just finally allowed herself to acknowledge the love that had never left. "Together?" she asked, squeezing Olivia's hand. "Always," Olivia replied. They walked up the steps together. Madison rang the bell, and when Catherine opened the door, her expression was carefully neutral. "Mother. Father." Madison's voice was steady. "This is Olivia Reed. We need to talk." What followed wasn't easy. Catherine was cold, furious, unwilling to accept what Madison was telling her. "This is unacceptable," she kept saying. "Unacceptable." But Richard, surprisingly, was quiet. And when Catherine finally stormed out of the room, he turned to Madison and Olivia and said, "Your mother needs time. I'm not sure how much time, but time." "And you?" Madison asked, her voice small. Her father looked at Olivia, really looked at her, assessing. Then he turned back to Madison. "You're happy." "Yes." Happier than I've seen you in years, he acknowledged. That has to count for something. He stood, extending his hand to Olivia. I can't say I understand all of this, but you're important to my daughter, so you're welcome in this house. It wasn't acceptance, not fully, but it was a start. 6 months after the wedding that wasn't, Madison and Olivia sat on the balcony of their new apartment. They had decided to split their time between Charleston and Boston, building a life that belonged to both of them. Do you ever regret it? Madison asked quietly, watching the sunset paint the sky. Running from your wedding, all the chaos that followed? Olivia thought for a moment, then shook her head. The only thing I regret is the 7 years we lost before that. Running from your wedding. That was you finally running toward something instead of away from it. Toward you. Toward yourself, Olivia corrected gently. I was just lucky enough to be part of that journey. Madison leaned into her, feeling the solid warmth of Olivia's presence. Life wasn't perfect. Her mother still barely spoke to her. Some of her old friends had drifted away. Charleston society had plenty to say about Madison Hartwell and her lifestyle. But she had Olivia. She had honesty. She had herself. You know what the funny thing is? Madison mused. I spent so many years trying to be perfect. The perfect daughter, the perfect society girl, the perfect fiancée. And I was miserable. And now? Now I'm imperfect, scandalous, and completely myself. Madison smiled. And I've never been happier. Olivia kissed her temple. Imperfectly perfect. As the sun set over Charleston, Madison thought about that moment in the chapel, seeing Olivia in the last pew. She thought about the choice she had made to run, the courage it had taken to choose honesty over expectation. She thought about David, who had eventually sent her a card that simply said, I hope you find happiness. About her father, who was slowly, carefully, learning to accept her as she was. About her mother, who might never fully come around, but who had at least stopped actively trying to change Madison's mind. But mostly, she thought about the woman beside her, the one who had loved her enough to let her go 7 years ago, and who loved her enough to come back when it mattered most. Thank you, Madison said softly. For what? For showing up. For being brave when I couldn't be. For waiting. Madison. Olivia turned to face her fully. You were the brave one. I just showed up. You're the one who had to choose yourself, choose us, choose truth over comfort. That takes real courage. We could have avoided 7 years of heartache if I'd been brave sooner. Maybe. Olivia shrugged. Or maybe we both needed those 7 years to become the people who could actually build something lasting. Maybe we needed to lose each other to understand what we had. That's very philosophical of you. I'm a museum curator. We're naturally contemplative about the past. Olivia smiled. But here's what I know for certain. I don't regret a single moment that led us back to each other. Not the pain, not the separation, not even you almost marrying someone else. Because all of it brought us here. Here, Madison repeated, looking around at their balcony, their shared space, their life. I like here. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence as the last rays of sun disappeared and the stars began to emerge. In the distance, they could hear the city of Charleston settling into evening. Church bells ringing, boats in the harbor, the gentle hum of life continuing. You know what I realized? Madison said eventually. When I was standing at that altar, about to promise my life to David, I felt like I was drowning, like I was about to lock myself into a prison of my own making. And now I feel like I can breathe. Like for the first time in my life, I'm not performing or pretending or trying to be someone I'm not. I'm just me. Messy, imperfect, scandalous me. Olivia's arms tightened around her. For what it's worth, I've always loved the real you, the you that you tried so hard to hide from the world. I know, Madison said. That's why I ran. Because when I saw you in that chapel, I realized I was about to spend the rest of my life hiding. And I just couldn't do it anymore. Best run of your life? Madison laughed. Definitely the most important. She turned in Olivia's arms, looking into those gray eyes that had haunted her dreams for 7 years. I love you. I should have said it more these past few months, but I love you. I've loved you since that first summer. I loved you through 7 years of trying not to. And I'll love you for whatever comes next. I love you too, Olivia whispered. Always have, always will. They kissed as the Charleston night settled around them. 2 women who had found each other, lost each other, and fought their way back to each other against all odds. The path ahead wouldn't always be easy. There would be more difficult conversations, more disapproval from people who couldn't understand, more moments of doubt and fear. But they would face it together. No more running, no more hiding, no more living half-lives to satisfy other people's expectations. Just 2 women, imperfectly perfect for each other, building a life on foundations of honesty, courage, and love that had survived 7 years of separation and come back stronger than ever. And as the stars emerged over Charleston, Madison realized something profound. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is run, not away from your life, but toward it. Toward the truth of who you are, toward the love you deserve, toward the person waiting for you in the last pew, hoping you'll be brave enough to choose yourself. She had run from the altar, and in running, she had finally found her way home. A year after the wedding that wasn't, on a quiet spring afternoon, Madison and Olivia stood in a small garden ceremony, surrounded by the people who truly mattered. Rachel was there, beaming. Madison's father attended, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. Even Catherine came, sitting in the back row with a carefully neutral expression that wasn't quite acceptance but wasn't rejection either. It was progress. As they exchanged vows they had written themselves, Madison looked at Olivia and thought about that desperate run from the chapel, about 7 years of heartache, about the courage it took to choose love over expectation. I run toward you now, she said, her voice strong and clear, always toward you, never away again. Olivia smiled through happy tears, and I promise to always be worth running toward. They were imperfect, unconventional, and exactly what each other needed. And when they kissed as the officiant pronounced them married, Madison felt something she had never felt standing at that other altar a year ago. Complete and utter certainty. This was home. This was love. This was exactly where she was meant to be. If this story touched your heart, we'd love for you to stay with us at Soul Stirring Stories. We believe in the power of love that refuses to be silenced, in the courage it takes to choose yourself, and in the truth that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is run toward the life you're meant to live. If Madison and Olivia's journey moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories about love, courage, and the families we choose. Thank you for listening. Your presence here means everything. Until next time, may you always have the courage to run toward your truth.